We are live. 3, 2, and 1. We have made it to the finish line. The Big Ten regular season is done, and now we look to the postseason with the conference tournament starting in just 3 days in Indianapolis. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Big Ten podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ben Stevens. It is Monday, March 8th, and today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Go to BuiltBar.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON20, and you'll get 20% off your next order. Built Bar has some Built Bar bracket madness happening, and that's really where our attention is as well. It is March Madness. The regular season is now in the books. The postseason is what we have on the horizon. The conference tournament in Indianapolis, and of course, the NCAA tournament in just a week after that, also in the great state of Indiana. So on this Monday, Stevens and Stevens episode for the second straight week, joining me is Jay Stevens, the host of the Locked On Buckeyes podcast, my Monday co-host, riding along with me at a very important time because, Jay, we have made it. It is postseason basketball in the college hoop sphere. It's a lot of fun to be talking about. This is March.
Big Ten Ben and the John Rothstein saying this is March. They go hand in hand. March is here. We had a buzzer beater. It wasn't a Big Ten, but it was a half-court buzzer beater. Saw the players cheering. A lot of teams have already punched their ticket to the big dance. Not teams in the Big Ten just yet. Got a big loaded Big Ten conference tournament coming up to my home city, Indianapolis, Indiana. So I'm looking forward to that game, that tournament, and looking to see who upsets who during this week's games.
I said 3 days until the start of the Big Ten tournament. I'm including this day, Monday, in that. It starts Wednesday with the opening round, the first four action in the Big Ten tournament. And we know for the most part, Jay, the seeding for the Big Ten tournament being played in Indianapolis this upcoming week. The only game we do not know, because Jay and I are a little bit on the early bird side, recording before the conclusion of Maryland and Penn State in the regular season finale on Sunday night. The only seeding we don't know is Rutgers and Maryland in the 7 and 8 spots in the Big Ten tournament. But everything else we know. Michigan locked up that top spot with their win over Michigan State on Thursday. Illinois firmly in the 2 with a win over Wisconsin on Sunday. The Iowa Hawkeyes will be the 3 seed. Purdue earning the 4th and final bye in that number 4 spot with a win over Indiana this weekend. Ohio State is 5. Wisconsin 6. As we said, still need to decide between Rutgers and Maryland at 7 and 8. Michigan State is 9. Indiana 10. And then at the 11 seed, it will be the Penn State Nittany Lions, the 12 seed. Northwestern on a 3-game winning streak to end out the regular season. They started off Big Ten play, a perfect 3-0. They end the Big Ten regular season with 3 straight wins. They will take on Minnesota as the number 13 seed, and then the bottom feeder in the Big Ten Conference, Nebraska, the number 14 seed for the Big Ten tournament. But Jay, outside of the Big Ten tournament, of course, the big dance is what it is after the Big Ten tournament, and it looms in our mind very strongly, especially with what we saw on Sunday afternoon in the final of the back-to-back between Michigan State and Michigan. The Spartans upsetting second-ranked Michigan in the Breslin Center in East Lansing. Jay Stevens, do you think that is good enough to firmly put MSU inside the NCAA tournament field for the 23rd straight year?
Yeah, Ben, they did not end their season the way the Duke Blue Devils did. Duke is just, I forget the young man's name that left, that quit the team. I forget his name, but everyone said,
Johnson.
There you go.
Old history. We don't care about him anymore.
But it's very true. He's gone. But Duke said, we're going to try and turn this thing around. Had a bad start to the year. Coach K said, no, we're going to cancel all of the non-conference games. Come back in. They still play bad. My dad literally asked me if Duke was playing basketball this year. I said, yeah, Dad, they are. They just aren't that good. And that's why ESPN is not showcasing very many of their games in the normal Duke Blue Devil assigned spots in normal seasons. Michigan State, Tom Izzo. I can't do word for word what your tweet said earlier, Ben, about Tom Izzo, but it's very true. Tom Izzo in February, the Spartans teams that he coaches, completely different than November and December. I don't know why. I don't know if he just gets that orange and he starts to peel away till he gets exactly what he wants, that juicy orange, and then it's almost to perfection at the right time of year. I don't know. But between Joshua Langford, between Aaron Henry, I want to say Rocket Watts had 21 points to lead them off the bench. I think right now, if you play the Michigan State Spartans in the Big Ten Conference tournament, I don't think that they have to win the tournament to punch their ticket. But I'm just saying, if you play them, you better be ready. Unlike what Ohio State was at the end of that game against Illinois, Ohio State flopped. Michigan State could be the team that pulls a big upset or two this week.
I think the Spartans are firmly inside the NCAA tournament field. Our resident bracketologist, who we'll hear from on Wednesday's episode, Kevin Sweeney, also tweeted after Michigan State's 70-64 victory over Michigan on Sunday evening that he considered Michigan State now a lock for the tournament. The tweet that you are referencing from me, Jay Stevens, is the joke that we all have and we have mentioned many times on this show. January, February, Izzo, and then April. That's how things go in East Lansing. But there is credence to the humor. Michigan State ended off this year in their final 7 games. They were 5-2 after February 20th. February 20th and later, Michigan State ended out the year 5-2 with wins against Illinois, Ohio State, and Michigan wrapped up in there. Incredibly well done. In the past 6 seasons, in games, regular season games following February 20th or later, Michigan State 22-5 in the past 6 years in regular season games dated February 20th or later. Tom Izzo knows when to turn it on, knows when to hit that clutch gene for his team, and finds his squad and assembles them. And that's why they have been in the NCAA tournament field for now 23 straight years. Because, again, I think with this win over Michigan, you're not going to find a resume on the bubble that has as many quality wins as Michigan State has this year. When you can rack up wins against Ohio State, Illinois, and Michigan, when you have 2 wins over 2 presumed 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament, that should get you into the field. I think Michigan State did that on Sunday. And like you mentioned, Rocket Watts was phenomenal off the bench. 21 points off the bench for the Spartans. Aaron Henry, who has been their guy all season long, really spurning this comeback. 18 points as well. A couple clutch free throws to seal the deal. Michigan State, in my mind, Jay, will be going dancing. They will be the number 9 seed in the Big Ten tournament, most likely facing Maryland in their opening round game on Thursday. I thought they would need that win in the Big Ten tournament to clinch their NCAA tournament berth. I think they have it now. I think with the win over Michigan on Sunday evening, the Spartans will be going dancing again for the 23rd straight year. The streak in East Lansing continues. Jay, let's go back a day to Saturday. Ohio State and Illinois, like you mentioned, a top 10 tilt that was so impactful, not for the Big Ten tournament, unless you're the Buckeyes, who maybe could have gotten into the 4 seed, but Purdue won before them, so it didn't really matter. But really, for the NCAA tournament and the implications on that number 1 line, the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament field. Illinois and the masked man himself, one of the best closers in all of college basketball, Ayo Dosunmu with a late bucket. Illinois sealed the deal at the end. Ohio State let this one get away from them. What were your thoughts about the ending of that game between the Illini and the Buckeyes?
Those of you watching this show just saw me put my head back as soon as Ben turned to the day before the Michigan State-Michigan game when it was Ohio State and Illinois. Many Buckeye fans, actually a listener, Ben, reached out to me and said, "Hey, Jay, you got to make a comment about Chris Holtmann." Well, I'm not so much mad about Chris Holtmann. I'm going to praise Illinois. I'm going to praise Brad Underwood. Final minutes of the game, he put back in Kofi Cockburn, who was not in the game when E.J. Liddell went off between the under 8 minute and under 4 minute timeout. Kofi Cockburn comes back in. C.J. Walker comes back in. Then you see what had happened the entire game. The Buckeyes could not stop Andre Cabello. Couldn't stop him at all. Then at the final end, Illinois goes on a 9-0 run at the end of the game. Ayo Dosunmu hits the game-winning shot with 44 seconds left, I believe, in the game. Game over. Ohio State had no answer. There are a few teams out there that I do not want to play out there. Very, very few that I would not want to play right now in college basketball. As good as Michigan State's playing right now, you can play them. They can be beat. I got the elite of the elite will probably beat Michigan State. I'm not trying to play Michigan. I know Buckeye fans will hate me for saying the name, but so be it. You don't want to play Michigan. I don't want to play Baylor. I don't want to play Gonzaga. I don't want to play Illinois. They have one of the best players in college basketball in Ayo Dosunmu. They have a big mammoth man in Kofi Cockburn. I believe he's 7 foot or 7'1", 285. Then they got a guard off the bench who you can't stop, who's basically getting around everybody. You can't guard him, getting to the hole at will. That kind of trio, that's how you win the NCAA tournament. I always say elite guard play is big, and to win you need an elite guard. But Ben, they got Andre off the bench, who's almost, I won't say he's at the elite status yet, but that man come back next year. Ayo's gone. Andre has the ball being running the point. Andre Cabello could be that guy that is the man on campus because he's showing this year he's good. Next year, man, he might be elite.
This is the Stevens and Stevens Monday episode of the Locked On Big Ten podcast. And what Jay Stevens, the host of Locked On Buckeyes, said right there about the experience and the depth now surrounding Ayo Dosunmu, I think makes Illinois a very dangerous team. I have said all along, Jay, dating back to December, that Illinois at its best, in my mind, is still the best team in the Big Ten Conference. With Michigan performing as well as they did down the stretch, it made me eat my words a little bit. But now, with Illinois on a 4-game winning streak to end out the regular season, 3 of those wins coming without Ayo Dosunmu, and the experience and the confidence that the young freshmen on this team have had, I think that bodes very well for Illinois as they get to this postseason and as they look at the big dance. I think they firmly, about 95% or so, certainly have a lock on the fourth and final number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament as it stands right now. And you mentioned Andre Curbelo, 19 points against the Buckeyes on Saturday. He was averaging just shy of 15 points in a 3-game winning streak without Ayo. So to still see that production, even with Ayo Dosunmu back in the fold, who was spectacular and the closer we all expect on Saturday against the Buckeyes as well. This is a very potent and a very dangerous Illinois team that I think is up there with the likes of Gonzaga, Baylor, and Michigan. Put them on the same tier. By the way, Michigan still, even with a loss to Michigan State, took care of business they needed to take care of on Thursday night. I don't think this game really affects them much as you look at the number 1 seed line. They'll be fine. The biggest thing for them, Eli Brooks, one of their most versatile players on both ends of the floor, went down early in that game with an ankle injury. We hope he can come back healthy for this postseason run for Michigan. But I believe Illinois will be the 4th and final number 1 seed on that 1 line in the NCAA tournament. Ohio State now ends off the regular season on a 4-game losing skid. They will get a couple extra shots in the Big Ten tournament, and I think that could help them. They'll be playing on Thursday in that second round before the quarterfinals. I think they need a win. I think they need to build some of that confidence back up. And they didn't play poorly on Saturday by any means, but we just saw Illinois' real overall gusto take over at the end of that game and close the win for the Illini. EJ Liddell, by the way, the 2-time Mr. Illinois State basketball, loves playing against his home state team. 19 points against Illinois on Saturday, 26 points the first time those two teams met back in the middle part of January. So, Jay, we're bouncing back and forth a little bit between Sunday and Saturday, but we're hitting on the biggest storylines of the regular season finale weekend in the Big Ten Conference as it pertains to men's basketball, because they have so many implications for not only the Big Ten tournament, which starts in just 2 days in Indianapolis, or 3 days if you include Monday, and the NCAA tournament. One of those games was the first game on Sunday, a top 25 matchup, 25th ranked Wisconsin on the road visiting Carver Hawkeye and the 5th ranked Iowa Hawkeyes. And boy, it was a very interesting ending of that game. A final minute that was dominated by officiating that made a really good college basketball game take a back seat to officials going to review and just really ruining the flow of what was a really good top 25 tilt on the regular season finale day of the Big Ten season. What did you take away from the game between Iowa and Wisconsin? Lost you there. You back? Seems as though we're having a few technical difficulties if you're watching this on WKYC with our man Jay Stevens, the Stevens and Stevens podcast on this Monday. I just asked Jay for his thoughts about Wisconsin and Iowa. I gave you my thoughts a little bit as well at the ending of that game, dominated by officiating. And that's not what you want. You want to see the players result in what the final outcome is. Let it be played out on the floor. Jay, I was talking to you now that you are back with us, I believe.
Yes, I am.
There he is. Jay has been dealing with some power outages around his apartment complex. The fact that he's even here right now on this Stevens and Stevens Monday episode of the Locked On Big Ten podcast shows that he is ready for March. So, Jay, I was talking about the Badgers and the Hawkeyes. I know you were dealing with some of those power issues at the ending of that game.
Yes.
But did you take anything away from Iowa clinching the number 3 seed in the Big Ten tournament? And now Wisconsin ends the year losers of 5 of their last 6 games.
Well, Ben, you mentioned Eli Brooks, the injury just earlier, and I believe Joe Wieskamp went down in the Iowa game. Yep. I believe he did not come back into the game after that. And with that loss there, the individual, as lethal as Iowa is, they need him to make a deep tournament run. And I don't want to harp on the end of the game situation and refereeing and what Greg Gard said and what you may or may not think about the referee that was in the situation. That's going to be for a conversation for another day. Ben, tackle that if you want to. I may have missed it with the power outages that have been going on with the issues here. But you lose a player like that right now at this point in the season. You've already lost Jack Nungy. earlier. It was a few weeks ago. Jack Nungy off the bench, out for the season. I want to say it was a leg injury. And now you're losing a key piece, a guy that you need to go deep. If he does not come back, that could be one of the biggest things people take away from this game. One injury alone could mess up the deep tournament run, possible national championship chances Iowa has right now.
And that's a great point, Jay. And it will be interesting to see what exactly happens with Joe Wieskamp. He came back onto the bench in that second half in a boot. There was a little bit of optimism that they felt it wasn't overly serious, but he makes that team one of the best in the country. Iowa ends off the year winning 7 of their 8 last games, and the defense really a reason why, again, holding Wisconsin, who is not a great offensive team, to 73 points. And it was tough to see a guy in Joe Wieskamp struggle and was on such a good start of that game, as we have lost Jay once again here if you're watching on WKYC, but that's all right. We're dealing with some technical difficulties. This is March. We're figuring it out. But Joe Wieskamp started off the game against Wisconsin, a blistering 5 for 5 from the field, 12 points early on in that first half against the Badgers. And then to go down the way he did, there is still some optimism, though, that Joe Wieskamp can be back. Iowa, with the double bye, does not play until Friday's quarterfinals in the Big Ten tournament. Even for that, they need him for the NCAA tournament run. And hopefully Joe Wieskamp is back healthy, because Iowa, in the iteration they are playing right now, with the defense being as good as they are, we talked about Illinois being on the same level of Michigan, Baylor, and Gonzaga. I would put Iowa up there as well when they are playing the level of defense they are, in a great moment after the win for Iowa on Senior Day in Carver Hawkeye. The Iowa basketball program announcing they are retiring the number 55 for their all-time leading scorer in Luka Garza. A great moment to end off Senior Day, to end off the regular season for Iowa. As Jay mentioned, the refereeing controversy at the end of that game, some of the officiating to end it off. If you want hotter takes, if you want to dive even deeper, go listen to our guy, Asher Lowe, with Locked On Badgers. I know he has reaction to what Greg Gard said after the game and the hook and hold call against Brad Davison and the reputation that follows Brad around the Big Ten Conference. All of those very valid concerns coming from Greg Gard. Other Big Ten fans might have some thoughts about Brad Davison their own. Go listen to Locked On Badgers and Asher Lowe for a further breakdown on the final minute of that game between Wisconsin and Iowa. Jay, as we now go back to Saturday once more, let's hit on the 2 games that were earlier in the day. Purdue beating Indiana for the 9th straight time. It has now been 1,842 days, 43 days as we are on Monday, since Purdue last lost to Indiana. Purdue wrapped up that double bye in the Big Ten tournament. Indiana will not be playing in the NCAA tournament. And then really the great news of the day, Rutgers basketball getting an overtime win on the road against Minnesota, and I think clinching Rutgers' first appearance in the NCAA tournament in 3 decades. You could see the emotion on Steve Peichel after the game, the seniors on that team, and Miles Johnson and Geo Baker, everybody ecstatic that Rutgers back in the big dance for the first time since the 1990-91 season. 30 years, but I think, Jay, Rutgers is going dancing once again.
Yes, sir. They're going dancing, and if you have not seen, I want to say it's Jim Valvano and with his SB speech. If you haven't seen that video, I got it from Ben's page. I don't know if you found that video yourself or you put it together or shortened it up.
Yeah. I shortened it up. I remember the clip because it's a really funny story of Jim Valvano saying before he was Rutgers' freshman basketball coach back in the late 70s, and he took a speech from one of his idols, Vince Lombardi, who walked into the locker room before his first game with the Green Bay Packers and said, "Gentlemen, the 3 things that matter this year, your family, your religion, and the Green Bay Packers." And Jim Valvano gives a rendition of when he's preparing to do that speech, and he goes, "Your family, your religion, and Rutgers basketball." So I clipped off that part and have pretty much shared it out after all of Rutgers' meaningful wins this year. And, of course, getting back to the big dance for the first time in 3 decades, that counts as a very meaningful win in Piscataway.
Absolutely. And it's a great way to just have fun, but also give great recognition for what this team has done this year. Yes, they have a lot of talent. You look on their roster, many of you will hear the name Harper, Ron Harper. I know that guy. Is his son good? Yes, he's good. He is amazing on the basketball court. Jacob Young, is he good? Yes, he's amazing on the basketball court. And this team together, they've had some ups, they've had some downs, they've had some hiccups. But to be playing like they are right now, to be able to move forward and to say, yes, this season may not have been the best season. We have a lot of talent. We have a lot of shooters. And to be able to move and win and win and win, it's phenomenal to be able to say we may be in the dance.
I think the long drought of not making the NCAA tournament loom large over this Rutgers team to end out the year, because they got all the way up to number 11 in the country early on in the basketball season, won on a 5-game skid in the middle of the Big Ten portion of their slate, then won on a winning streak of their own, and then they split their final 8 games. We're 4-4 over the home stretch of this regular season, and I think the pressure of making the big dance for the first time in 3 decades and being the team to snap that streak, which they would have been last year had there been an NCAA tournament played, was a daunting task for this Rutgers team. And I think it loomed on them a little bit. That pressure weighed on them a little bit, but they are able to snap that. And I think they have a lot of pieces in place, Jay, like you mentioned, to be a very talented roster that relies on energy and defense. And then that hopefully sparks their offense as well. This Rutgers team, not only in the Big Ten tournament, but I think in the Big Dance, depending on matchups, could pull off a couple of upsets, and they could be a second weekend team coming out of the Big Ten Conference. As we mentioned, Purdue, they will be the number 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. They're playing some very fine basketball right now, winners of 5 straight. I also think they're a dangerous team as we look at the Big Dance. And the 3rd game, or the 6th game of this weekend, the 3rd game on Saturday, as we are still awaiting the result of Maryland and Penn State. But the other one between Nebraska and Northwestern, the final game of this weekend, I mean, Northwestern finishing out strong, winning 3 straight games to end out the year. Is there any hope for them in the Big Ten tournament? I don't know if I feel so confidently about that, but it was a great game in Evanston. Still very much of a feel of this is March, with a late Ryan Young bucket being the deciding factor there. So still very exciting things all around the Big Ten Conference.
So I'm laughing for this very reason. People talk about this being a gauntlet. People talk about this year being just very, very tough. But even the teams down at the bottom of the conference, if they were in the Big Ten the NCAA tournament, and somehow, I know it's not possible, but somehow they found a way to say, "Oh, the Big Ten, you're so tough. You guys are so good at basketball. It's a gauntlet. It's a battle every time on the court. We're going to allow all 14 of you guys in there. There's a good chance all 14 could win at least one game." That's how good this league is. The bottom, they're at the bottom for a reason. The top is at the top for a reason. In the middle, the same way. But all 14 teams on any given night can pull off an upset and beat you. And it's just how scary. It's just how amazing, how nice it is going to be to watch the Big Ten Conference tournament. And then 9, maybe 10 conference teams get to the NCAA tournament. I'm telling you, Ben, you mentioned Purdue. I don't want to play Purdue right now. I don't want to play Purdue at all. And I would want to play, if I was a mid-major, don't laugh at the 10th team in the Big Ten if they get into the and if they get to the Big Dance, because they might be able to beat you. They're at the bottom of the league for a reason, but there's still good basketball to be played from that team as well.
2 more days after this Monday until the Big Ten tournament starts on Wednesday in downtown Indianapolis, Lucas Oil Stadium, with that opening round, the first 4 matchups. We know the seeds for that one. The 11 seed Penn State will take on Nebraska, the 14 seed, and then the 12 seed Northwestern takes on the 13 seed Minnesota. The Gophers have lost 7 straight. Northwestern has won 3 straight. Could Chris Collins' crew get a win in the Big Ten tournament? It seems like that could be a very likely scenario for the number 12 seeded Northwestern Wildcats. But we know the seeding for the Big Ten tournament. It starts in 48 hours in Indianapolis, now the mecca of all of college basketball, but especially the Big Ten basketball conference, as we get ready for this postseason across the college hoops landscape. Again, the seeding as it stands at this moment, Jay and I still awaiting the result between Maryland and Penn State to end off the regular season. But what we know for sure, the top 4 teams that will have double byes: Michigan is the 1, Illinois is the 2, Iowa 3, Purdue 4, Ohio State is slotted in the 5th spot, Wisconsin 6th. We still need to see what happens between Rutgers and Maryland in that 7 and 8 spot. Michigan State 9, Indiana 10. And then again, the bottom 4 of the conference who will open up action on Wednesday. 11 is Penn State, 12 Northwestern, 13 Minnesota, 14 Nebraska. And that is how the seeding will play out for the Big Ten tournament. This is March. This is now the postseason here on the Locked On Big Ten podcast, and getting you ready for all of it, recapping the regular season finale weekend and getting you set. The table is set for the postseason for all of March Madness and the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament on this Stevens and Stevens Monday show of the Locked On Big Ten podcast. It is Jay Stevens, my co-host, my wingman for these Monday episodes for the time being of the Locked On Buckeyes podcast. Jay, thank you for bearing through some of the power outages, some of the technical difficulties of this episode, but I think we did a good job overall getting people the information they need to know to be a smarter, more engaged fan in this Big Ten basketball season at the most important point of this college basketball season.
I would say so as well, Ben. Thanks for having me on. This is always going to be fun. And no matter what difficulties we have right now, I hope no teams have difficulties down the road during the conference tournament, because if you do, you might be on the outside a little bit earlier than expected.